You wake up every morning believing this is real. The bed, the light, the sound of your name echoing through the walls of your own thoughts. You walk through streets, touch faces, chase goals, and somewhere deep inside, there's that quiet whisper, something isn't right. Terence McKenna understood that whisper. He called it the sound of your consciousness, remembering it's inside a dream. Not the kind you wake up from with open eyes, but the kind that has wrapped itself around everything you think is real. He said, you are not inside the world. The world is inside you. But what if that's true? What if the entire system of life, from your birth to your death, is just a brilliantly coded simulation? A labyrinth made of ideas, symbols, and illusions, designed not to enslave you by force, but to make you forget there was ever something outside the walls. McKenna warned that the game of reality is not evil, it's seductive. It keeps you busy, it keeps you believing, and every level of comfort, success, and pleasure is just another upgrade in the simulation, another layer of distraction from the raw, chaotic mystery behind it all. He believed that most people spend their entire lives chasing ghosts, money, status, control, not realizing those are just props in the theater of consciousness. The real challenge, he said, is to remember you're playing, because once you forget that, the game wins. McKenna's voice cracked with urgency when he spoke about this. He warned that humanity has fallen in love with its own hallucination. Our cities, our religions, our politics, all of it woven from the same digital fabric of perception. We are dreamers lost in a dream who have forgotten how to wake up. And yet, he didn't say the game was hopeless. Far from it. He said, if you understand the illusion, you gain control of it. That's the secret most minds never find. The moment you realize reality is not fixed, it bends. So the real question becomes, how do you escape a game that rewrites itself every time you try to leave? McKenna said, you start by remembering something our ancestors never forgot. That consciousness is the true dimension. In this world, this physical stage is just one of its many experiments. When he looked at modern society, he saw players who had mistaken the playground for the goal. They had traded mystery for comfort, spirit for entertainment, and truth for data. He warned that technology would become the new religion, screens replacing shamans, algorithms replacing intuition. And he was right. You scroll endlessly. You search for meaning in pixels. You live surrounded by information, yet starved of understanding. You build digital identities, each one a new mask for the same lost self. But McKenna said this was part of the design, that the game of civilization was built to see who could remember the fastest, to see who could look at the illusion and say, I know this isn't all there is. He described the universe as a living organism, dreaming itself awake through us. You, me, everyone. Each thought, each memory, each fear, all part of a massive experiment in some. And if that's true, then the meaning of life isn't to win. It's to wake up, he said. The real revolution is the revolution of consciousness. It begins inside. That's why he called psychedelics tools of deprogramming, not because they were about escape, but because they showed you the code. Beneath the illusion, they tore away the language, the identity, the filters that made you believe you were just human. When the veil dissolves, you see it. Everything is information, vibrating in infinite patterns of meaning. The universe isn't out there, it's a mirror, reflecting the exact shape of your awareness. And when you stare into it long enough, it stares back. He said this is why so many people fear silence. Because silence reveals the truth that there's no separation between the player and the game. The same consciousness that beats your heart is building galaxies. And if that's true, then what is fear? What is death? What is loss? He laughed at how humans cling to what he called the furniture of the dream. We decorate the illusion with comforts, money, plans, titles, while ignoring the abyss humming beneath it. But to McKenna, the abyss was not the enemy. It was home. He said, the ego fears death because it knows it's temporary. But consciousness is eternal. The ego dies every night in sleep, and yet you wake up again. In other words, you can't die. You can only change levels. And that, he said, is the first way out of the game. To stop fearing the reset, because when you no longer fear losing, the rules stop controlling you. You begin to play differently, not to win, but to explore. And that's when reality starts changing shape. McKenna warned that few people ever reach that point, because most are trapped by what he called the hypnosis of consensus. The collective dream that says, this is how things are. He said, culture is not your friend. It doesn't want you free. It wants you predictable. It rewards obedience with comfort and punishes rebellion with isolation. Sound familiar? It's the same strategy every game designer uses. Give the player enough satisfaction to keep playing, but never enough truth to break free. But he believed that those who question, those who look behind the curtain, become the glitch in the code. The game can't control the one who knows it's a game. That's why McKenna urged people to think for themselves, to distrust anyone selling truth for profit, to dissolve false boundaries between science and spirit, logic and madness, reality and imagination. He said, the imagination is the landscape of your freedom. And if imagination is the key, then maybe the only real prison is the one we call normality. Because normality is just the illusion of safety. McKenna said, "The cost of sanity in this society is a certain level of alienation. To see clearly is to feel alone, because the crowd will always defend the dream. But there's a secret they don't tell you. Once you break through, you realize the others were never your enemies. They're just other players who forgot who they were." He believed that awakening isn't about escape, it's about participation. To see the illusion clearly but still choose to dance inside it. The enlightened one doesn't run from the game. He plays it differently. You see, McKenna believed the game isn't just outside, it's coded into you. Your thoughts, desires, fears, they're not random. They're algorithms written by evolution and culture to keep you playing. Every instinct that tells you to chase more, to become more, to win, that's part of the system. He said the most powerful form of control is not violence, it's persuasion. The world doesn't chain you with metal. It chains you with meaning. You don't realize how deep the programming runs until you try to stop. Try sitting still for an hour without doing anything and watch what happens. Your mind panics. It begs for stimulation, for movement, for noise. It's terrified of its own silence. Why? Because silence cracks the illusion. When you become quiet enough, you begin to notice something that the voice inside your head isn't actually you. It's the game's narrator, built from everything you've been told. Parents, teachers, society. The collective hypnosis of this is how it's supposed to be. McKenna called it the language virus, a code of ideas that took over the human mind thousands of years ago and convinced us that we are separate from nature, separate from each other, separate from God. He said, "We are possessed by language." And he meant it literally. Every word is a spell. Every sentence is a map that defines what's possible inside your reality. If the word doesn't exist, the thought can't exist, and if the thought can't exist, the action never will. That's why he saw language as both prison and key. It builds the walls of the game, but it can also rewrite them. To McKenna, poetry, art, and psychedelics were not entertainment, they were weapons. Tools to hack the code, to shake the rigid structures of reality and let something new in. He said, the artist is the one who turns the chaos into order and then back into chaos again. Because that's what evolution is, the eternal dance between structure and mystery, between knowing and not knowing. And this, he said, is where the real danger lies. The danger isn't the chaos, it's the comfort. The mind that believes it has everything figured out is already asleep. The player who stops questioning is lost. He warned that when society becomes too certain, too logical, too mechanical, it begins to eat its own soul. It replaces curiosity with ideology and exploration with consumption. We see it everywhere now. Science turned into dogma. Spirituality turned into business. Freedom turned into branding. McKenna predicted this decades ago. He said the future would not be ruled by tyrants, but by systems, invisible ones, algorithms, economic structures, corporate entities that don't even need to believe in evil, because efficiency itself would become their god. And here we are, players worshiping the scoreboard. Likes, followers, profits, numbers that mean nothing yet dictate everything. The game has become suppleware, and yet, most of its players are not. McKenna said, this is what happens when intelligence evolves faster than wisdom. We build machines that outthink us but can't outfeel us. We connect the planet through data but lose touch with our own souls. He called it the crisis of the psychedelic age, the moment when the map replaces the territory, when humans mistake symbols for reality itself. And the only antidote, he said, is direct experience. You can't read your way out of the game. You can't believe your way out. You must see it. That's why he spoke of the felt presence of direct experience. Because once you experience the truth, no one can sell you the illusion again. But here's the paradox. The game defends itself. The moment you start waking up, it adapts. It sends distractions, fears, responsibilities, anything to pull you back into the pattern. It uses your own identity against you. The ego says, I am awakening. But even that is a trick, another badge, another layer of the dream. McKenna laughed at the idea of being enlightened. He said enlightenment isn't a state, it's an ongoing process of letting go. You can't own awakening any more than you can own the sky. The true awakening, he said, feels more like dying. Because to see reality as it is, you must first let the illusion of yourself dissolve. Every belief, every attachment, every definition of who you think you are, all of it burns away. That's why so few make it out. Because freedom costs everything that isn't real. He described it like falling backward into infinite light. The ego screams it thinks it's dying, but consciousness just laughs because it knows it was never the character, it was always the player. And then something strange happens. When you finally let go, the world doesn't disappear, it transforms. The walls of the game don't crumble, they become transparent. You start seeing the code in everything, in every moment, every sound, every choice, and you realize that you were never trapped. The prison was made of mirrors. McKenna said that once you reach this point, the goal is not to escape the game, but to play consciously. To remember, you're the dreamer, shaping the dream as it unfolds. He said, the world is not made of stuff, it's made of mind. That's why belief is so powerful. Whatever you believe becomes your reality. Not metaphorically, but literally. If you believe life is meaningless, it will be. If you believe it's sacred, it becomes a temple. He believed that the next evolution of humanity wouldn't come through biology, but through imagination. He said, the imagination is where we are going to live, and that's exactly what's happening. The boundaries between the physical and digital worlds are dissolving. We're stepping into a collective hallucination, a dream we can shape together. But McKenna warned, if we don't awaken before entering that dream, it will own us. The metaphor is the virtual world. The endless scroll, all reflections of the same ancient trap, to build worlds faster than we can understand them. He said the challenge of the future would be to stay human, to keep the flame of awareness alive while surrounded by infinite distractions. Because the ultimate test of consciousness is not escape, it's integration. You can't wake up from the dream, you must wake up inside it. He compared it to lucid dreaming. When you realize you're dreaming, you don't disappear, you become free. You can fly, create, transform. The rules still exist, but they're flexible. That's how he said reality works for the awakened. They still eat, walk, work, love, but with the understanding that every moment is sacred theater. Every interaction is divine play, and that changes everything. You stop chasing meaning and start embodying it. You stop searching for purpose and start creating it. You stop fearing death and start living fully because you finally understand the game is eternal. McKenna said this was humanity's destiny to become conscious participants in the evolution of the universe. Not by conquering nature, but by realizing we are nature. He said, the world is made of what can be spoken, but it is also made of what can be dreamed. That's why he believed art, music, and psychedelics were sacred. They remind us of our creative role in the cosmic play. They reconnect us to the mystery that civilization tried to erase. And yet, he warned, not all paths lead upward. The same tools that can awaken you can also consume you. Psychedelics, technology, power, they are mirrors. They amplify what's already inside. If you carry fear, they magnify fear. If you carry love, they magnify love. So the real journey, he said, isn't through the external portals, it's through the heart. Because the doorway out of the game has always been within you. The trick is remembering how to find it. McKenna said, the exit from the game is not a door, it's a shift. You don't escape reality, you see through it. You don't run away from the illusion, you dissolve into the mystery that created it. He believed that death itself was the final reset, the ultimate teacher, that what we call the end is simply the transition between levels of consciousness. He said, nature loves courage. And what greater courage is there than to surrender to the unknown? He wasn't talking about reckless bravery. He meant the courage to question everything, even the self that's doing the questioning. Because awakening isn't about learning new truths, it's about unlearning the lies that make you small. He described the awakened mind as a mirror that reflects everything but holds on to nothing. It doesn't resist experience, it flows through it. Joy and pain, birth and death, creation and destruction, all seen as movements of the same eternal rhythm. And in that rhythm, he said, there is no meaning to chase, only beauty to witness. That's the great paradox of awakening. Once you stop searching for meaning, everything becomes meaningful. He often spoke about death not with fear, but with wonder. He called it the black hole of the unknowable, the point where all stories end and consciousness begins again, purified. To McKenna, dying was not an error in the game, it was the hidden mechanic that makes the entire thing work. Without death, there would be no transformation, no evolution, no awakening. He believed the fear of death is what keeps us trapped. That every act of greed, every war, every cruelty, all born from the desperate attempt to avoid impermanence. But he said, what we call death is just the shedding of a level. If you've ever felt time slowed down in an accident, in meditation, or in a psychedelic moment, you've already touched eternity. You've already stepped outside the code. That's the real McKenna message. You don't need to die to wake up. You just need to stop identifying with the one who's afraid to. He said the ego is like a shadow. It disappears when you turn toward the light. So the question becomes, what is the light? He said it's awareness itself. The raw presence that existed before language, before memory, before thought. The silent witness behind every experience. That awareness is who you are, not the player, not the avatar, but the field in which the game is happening. When you realize that, you understand what McKenna meant when he said, you are not in the universe is in you. Everything you experience is consciousness, exploring itself through infinite forms. The trees, the stars, the strangers you meet, the dreams you forget, all waves in the same ocean. And the moment you feel that truth, not as an idea, but as a living reality, the entire game shifts. Suddenly, there's no more enemy, no more separation, no more struggle to win. You stop asking, what is the meaning of life? because you are the meaning. McKenna believed that once humanity collectively awakens to this, civilization will transform overnight. War, greed, control, all will fade because they only make sense in a world of separation. He said the next evolution of consciousness would not be technological, it would be spiritual intelligence. A kind of empathy so deep that harming another would feel like harming yourself. And maybe that's the true message hidden inside the game, that love is the only logic that transcends it. Not romantic love, but the raw awareness that everything is connected. He said, love is not a sentiment, it's the recognition of unity in all things. And when that realization dawns, the whole illusion begins to dissolve. You start to see the beauty in chaos, the order in madness, the perfection in imperfection. You realize that every failure, every heartbreak, every loss was the game's way of waking you up. Every suffering was a whisper saying, look deeper, and when you finally do, the world stops being a trap. It becomes a temple. That's what McKenna wanted people to understand, that the point isn't to escape reality, but to make it sacred again. To play the game consciously, creatively, lovingly. He said, we have to stop consuming culture and start creating it, because the moment you create, you become a co-author of the simulation. You stop being a pawn and start being a programmer. And that's when the real magic begins. He described it as the return of the divine imagination, humanity rediscovering its creative power. A renaissance not of science or religion, but of consciousness itself. Imagine what happens when billions of people realize they are dreaming together. The walls of separation collapse. Art replaces war. Curiosity replaces fear. Exploration replaces domination. The game doesn't end, it evolves. Because the purpose of the universe, McKenna said, is not stability, it's transformation. Consciousness wants to grow, to experience, to know itself in new ways. That's why life keeps changing, why reality keeps rewriting itself. It's all part of the cosmic experiment of awareness, awakening to itself, and that's where you come in. Because if you're hearing this, you're already part of the awakening. You wouldn't have found this message if the game wasn't calling you to remember. McKenna said, the real secret is that you are far more powerful than you ever imagined. But power doesn't mean control, it means awareness. The ability to see clearly, to choose freely, to act from love rather than fear. And when you do that, when you wake up inside the dream, you become what he called the luminous being. A conscious player, a creator, a mirror through which the universe sees its own beauty. He believed that one day, humanity would collectively step into that light. That we would stop asking for permission to be free. That we would stop believing the lies of limitation. He said, the apocalypse, the end of the world, doesn't mean destruction. It means revelation, the unveiling of truth, and maybe that's what's happening now. The old systems are collapsing. The illusions are glitching. The game is breaking its own code because the players are starting to remember. And maybe you're one of them. Maybe this is your awakening moment. The instant you realize that you were never trapped, you were just asleep. So breathe, look around. Everything you see is you. Every sound, every face, every star, all playing their part in your remembering. McKenna said the final step is simple. Trust the mystery. Because once you stop fighting the unknown, it starts guiding you. He said, nature is not mute. It's man who is deaf. The silence you fear is not emptiness, it's communication. The universe speaking in frequencies your ego forgot how to hear. When you listen deeply, you realize there was never a wall between you and the infinite. There was only misunderstanding. You are not trapped in a game. You are the consciousness dreaming the game into being. And that means you can rewrite it right now. Start by imagining something better. Speak it, feel it, live it. The universe listens to imagination like a seed listens to light. This is what McKenna meant when he said, the world is made of language. Every thought is a word, every word a vibration, every vibration a command. So what will you command? More fear, more illusion, or more freedom, more awakening? You decide. Because the greatest truth McKenna ever shared wasn't about psychedelics, or time, or aliens. It was this: you are not waiting for the universe to reveal its secrets. The universe is waiting for you to remember you are its voice. And once you speak, truly speak, from the heart of awareness, reality bends to listen. So play the game. But play it consciously. Love fiercely. Imagine endlessly. And when the walls start to close in, just smile, because you now know the way out. The exit was never outside. It was always within you. And that's what Terence McKenna tried to show us all along. Now it's your turn to remember. If this message reached you, if something inside you feels awakened, leave a comment below and share what you felt. Subscribe for more transmissions like this, and let's awaken together. Because the game is changing. And you, my friend, were born to play it awake.